everyone, and welcome back after the break. You have apologies for absences?
I have apologies, Provost, from Councillors Beattie, Bennett, Boys, Montgomery, and Russell.
Excuse me, Councillor Beattie's in the chamber. Thank you. The order of business.
Provost, there have been several papers tabled. First thing I draw to your attention is that in the minutes of the meeting of the Council of the 24th of June, the officers consider that there was an omission in Councillor Baxter's amendment, which we've tabled with a box round it as item D, and we would ask you to consider that as part of the minute submission. Also, we've circulated a report by the Chief Executive about the resignation of Councillor Peter Boys, which we've identified as item 4A to be taken immediately after the minutes. We've also circulated a response that we were given by the SNP administration in terms of the Leader's response to the question by Councillor Baxter. So that should be on the table as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we accept the amendment to the minutes of the 24th of June? Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest that you can declare throughout the meeting at any point? The minutes of the meeting for approval, Midlothian Council, 17th of June, 24th of June, as amended.
Thanks, Provost. On page 1680, item 14, on the reviews of fees and charges, we had quite a discussion at the meeting regarding the potential impact, unintended consequences, if you like, on some of the user groups. And we agreed at the meeting, as my understanding, that we would have an impact assessment carried out prior to the introduction of the next year's charges. And I just feel that what's been added to the initial recommendations in JAI to review the operation of the framework and strategy in early 2015 doesn't quite, for my mind, give me enough comfort that we're taking on board what was actually decided at the council meeting, and that was to have that impact assessment review prior to the implementation of the planned increases for the end of the year. And I just wanted council's view on that, and hopefully that slight amendment to the minutes just to reflect that.
Councillor Thompson.
I think I'd be happy to have that amendment included. I see no problem with that. It sort of certainly fits my recollection of where we're headed in the discussion.
Councillor Rosier.
Just to say, in the minutes, there's no mention in the table that's in there of New Battle swimming pool or the Newton Grange Leisure Centre, and I've just checked that we had omissions from the table, and they should actually be in there.
Okay. For noting in consideration, the Appeals Committee, the 2nd of July 2014, the Audit Committee, the 6th of May 2014. That's it. Move to item 5. Questions to the Leader of the Council. Sorry. Apologies. We have an additional item.
Thank you, Provost. This report advises of the resignation of Councillor Boys from Midlothian Council due to ill health. It also advises of the arrangements to fill the resulting vacancy. Members will note that in line with Section 34 of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973, the date from which the vacancy will be deemed to have occurred for the purpose of filling the vacancy will be Tuesday the 2nd of September. And further in line with Section 37(1) of the same Act, the election to fill the resulting vacancy were required to be held on or before Tuesday the 2nd of December. At Section 2.5, I make the point it will not be possible to combine the by-election to fill the vacancy created by the resignation with the forthcoming Scottish independence referendum on Thursday the 18th. And just further to that, and in relation to further consideration I've been giving the matter in the last 24 hours, because election resources are fully committed in the run-up to the referendum, I am minded not to publish the notice of poll until after the referendum has taken place, with the date of poll then being 5 weeks after that notice is published. Now, that will be subject to various practical considerations in relation to the resourcing and the running of the by-election, but that is my current thinking on the matter. In terms of the report before you, the recommendations are at Section 4, and you're simply invited to note the resignation of Councillor Peter Boyes effective from the 2nd of September, and note also that the date of the resulting by-election will be fixed by myself as a returning officer.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I think in noting the recommendations in the report, I think it's also appropriate to comment on the service that Peter has given to Midlothian Council prior to his resignation. I think we all know that Peter hasn't been particularly well recently, so while it's sad that he has felt the need to retire, it's entirely understandable. It's always been, it's slightly strange to say enjoyable, but it's always been good fun at times to cross swords with Peter in this chamber, because you knew you were always going to get something back from him when you were engaging Peter in a debate. And I think it's probably safe to say that just about everyone in this chamber will have had a disagreement with Peter at some point or other. But he always tended to come back at some point later with a lot of good humour behind that as well. So certainly he's been a character in the council, certainly since Lothian Region, and it's a point I sort of noticed when sort of reading the various tributes to Peter, that he was elected in 1978. That's the same year I was born. So it's a significant achievement that Peter has represented his community for such a time, and you don't do that by accident. You don't get re-elected that many times without putting in an effort and representing your community. So I think with that I would certainly wish Peter well in his future and time with his family.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. I would just like to ask that the Council instruct the Leader to write to Peter Boyes along these lines.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, question to the Leader by Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think the questions as printed in the Council papers, the response has been tabled, and I said I'd essentially just leave it at that. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Item number 6A is a motion put forward by myself. This motion calls upon both Hamas militants and the Israeli government to cease immediately the recent hostilities in the Gaza Strip. The indiscriminate bombing by Israel has led to a massively disproportionate number of Palestinian deaths. The UK government has announced that it will send £3 million worth of aid. I regard this as a token gesture. The campaign against the arms trade has stated that the UK government subsidises the arms trade, which employs around 65,000 highly skilled people to the tune of £890 million per annum. The UK has supplied weapons to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Libya, Sri Lanka, Iran, Egypt, Syria and Russia, and numerous other tin-pot dictators that it has been happy to call allies, all of whom have used these weapons to keep a minority in highly paid positions of power to the detriment of the majority. It is reported that Thatcher supported Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge and insisted that they keep their seat in the United Nations after they were ousted by the Vietnamese, even when it was widely known that Pol Pot and his henchmen had killed over 2 million of their own people. It makes one proud to be British. I believe the Palestinians have a right to their own state. Please support the motion. Councillor Bryan? Okay, thank you. Councillor Pottinger?
I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, and I could ask Jim Clifford to circulate that amendment.
Has everyone read the amendment? Would you care to speak on the amendment, Councillor Pottinger?
Yes, I feel I had to issue this amendment to the motion to show what an international issue this situation is. People marched throughout many cities on Saturday there in support of peace and freedom for the Palestinian people, and the siege on Gaza really has to come to an end. The marches was well publicised, has been very well attended after the London one particularly, and I witnessed a very big turnout in Edinburgh on Saturday as well for the event. There's 2 people in the chambers today that's actually been to Palestine, and they can give you first-hand information of the massacre that the Palestinian people who have been slaughtered just now, and they can give you first-hand information on the solidarity campaign that there is as ongoing. In 25 days, the world's 5th most powerful military force, Israel, has bombarded the seized area of Gaza. It's an area of 1.4 million people in a size of North and South Uist, crammed in, under siege, and with now nearly 2,000 Palestinians actually being killed in this bombardment, and 10,000 or more seriously injured. No one is safe in Gaza from Israel's war crimes. The United Nations has passed many motions condemning these war crimes and the occupation of areas in the West Bank, etc. And none of these motions has been adhered to by a member state of Israel. Gaza, with its borders sealed and with nowhere for the people to go, as you say, hospitals and schools, power stations and sewage works have all been bombarded, while Israel's war crimes against humanity mount up. The international arms trade that goes by Western governments and sanctioned by many governments, including in this country as well. And firms like Caterpillar at Uddingston used to be the main weapon of destruction in the West Bank as they bulldozed houses in areas occupied by Palestinians as Israel took more and more lands. And it's no an Addington question, it's no Caterpillar's issue, a global company. It's no anything like that, but there's a global answer to this. As we had a global answer to apartheid with the boycott, diversification and sanctions against the country of Israel until it actually complies with these United Nations resolutions. I believe taking my amendment firms us up and keeps us in line with a policy of peace for Gaza, a policy of peace for the Palestinians and freedom for the Palestinians, peace with Israel, and I want this boycott to help stop Israel's crimes against humanity. The resolution puts, the amendment now puts fairly the blame at who's actually pressing the trigger in this conflict. And I think that helps strengthen up the resolution, and I urge all members to support the motion as amended. Thank you.
Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, I'd just like to second the amendment, Provost. I think, as Brian says, I think it focuses it down right to where the blame lies, because I think that the original motion, to be honest, takes the focus away from that, because it's trying to get, trying to lay the blame square at the door of the UK government. I think that just misses the point here. I think that it's really important that we focus on exactly who's to blame, and that is Israel in this circumstance. So I'm prepared to support it on that basis. I think I always think twice about, when we're putting motions forward to Council, about motions that are remote from us, about things that are going on abroad. We're a council, we should be concentrating on council business. But there are times where it's right to take this kind of stance and make this kind of statement. And as Brian said there, I think I can recall the criticism that came from the UK government at the time of Glasgow Council when it renamed one of its streets after Nelson Mandela, the street that included the South African consulate. And it had an effect, and it made a difference. So I think there is a role to play, and I would hope that members of the Council would take it as a constructive amendment here that does nothing but strengthen the resolution, motion that's been put before us.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Pottinger is quite correct. The situation in Gaza is intolerable. It's the biggest prison in the world. They're locked in to this tiny area, and I think the motion, the sentiments behind the amendment are totally excellent. It's just a matter of I would disagree with where it goes into the original motion. I would put it in between the second last and last paragraph. Israel is the original terrorist state. If you go back to the 1940s and the British Mandate, Israel formed terrorist gangs. The Zionists formed terrorist gangs like the Stern Gang, which later became the Irgun. The Haganah was another such gang. They fought amongst each other, very much in the way the provisionals in the IRA also did. They also did the same activities. They bombed the King David Hotel to the loss of 91 lives. 15 of them were local employees. The rest were British servicemen and their families. Israel, to this day, celebrates that as a cause of national celebration, the bombing of this King David Hotel. They invented the letter bomb. They used it to terrorise Arabs out of their Palestinian homes in what was Palestine, to clear them and to make way for the Israeli state. So they are the original aggressors, and this, I think, should be brought to the Council's attention. As to the other aspect of the UK government, the arms industry does spread. I think these paragraphs should be left in. It's not, counterpoint to refer to Caterpillar. Edinburgh bears with me. The Ferranti, which used to be down at Crewe Toll, it designed the guidance system for the Exocet. And a friend who worked there in 1982, they went into work with very mixed feelings after the Sheffield was sunk by the exocet missile from the Argentine Air Force. The guidance system was made in Edinburgh that led to the sinking of the Sheffield. We have exported death around the world, so I think these paragraphs should remain in, but I also think the amendment is excellent and should be inserted between the second last and the last paragraph.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I tend to agree. Reading the amendment, I fully agree with it, but removing some of the paragraphs of the original motion, I feel, takes some important points away. Divestment, I think, should not be just from investment in Israeli financial interests, but also from our own investment in the arms trade. For example, export licences worth £42 million were granted to 130 British defence manufacturers since 2010 to sell military equipment to Israel. We are one of the highest spenders, one of the highest investors in the arms trade in the world. And the fact that our enemy's enemy is our friend is still seems to be foreign policy in this country. The UK foreign policy, I think, is abominable. So I agree with Councillor Constable that we should incorporate the amendment, but I think also we should incorporate the original motion, and I would support any move to incorporate both parts into the same motion.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Just very brief, Provost, was to support Councillor Constable's suggestion. I think, take nothing away from the amendment, I think it's excellent and absolutely should be included, but it is just the point of, I think the other points are also very valid. We need to make a stand in Midlothian and have our voices heard, but we have to also recognise that we're still part of a country whose government is undertaking the actions that are helping to support some of the acts that we're condemning in the rest of the motion. So from that point of view, I think we need to keep the whole thing, and combining the two, I think, it doesn't take anything away from any of it, and it allows a united voice to be taken forward from this council.
Okay, Mr. Yerkes.
Thank you, Convener. With some real trepidation, I would like just to mention that as a Christian we look for the day when all swords will be turned to ploughshares, when there will be no weapons of war. I just wonder about the wisdom of a motion like this, which is so one-sided, which doesn't refer at all to all the rockets that rained down on Israel for many, many weeks. I also wonder about the wisdom of a motion which so completely rules out any support for weapons of warfare when those are being supplied to enable the salvation of life in those trapped on Mount Sinjar and the attack against a terrorist state which is a step or two beyond the worst we've seen so far. I just feel that the motion as put is extremely one-sided, doesn't take any account of the other record of behaviour in the other side of this conflict, and is unbalanced in respect of the need for weapons of war in some cases to save lives on a very large scale. So just a blanket divestment of investment from weapons of war is, I feel, not the issue. It's a question of that very, very great responsibility of supplying them very carefully under all possible controls to states whose future we are not going to know.
I think in my motion that I attempted to put the blame on the Israeli government and the Hamas militants. And I think we have to seriously point the finger at the people that are providing the weapons that are killing men, women and children in all areas of the world. And I'm afraid the UK government is up to its neck, as I read out in my in the League tables, organisations and countries that the UK provides weapons to. And it even subsidises every arms exports job to the tune of £13,000 a year. I'm happy to accept your amendment, but to insert it, as Councillor Constable has suggested, in between the second last and the last paragraph. Councillor Baxter.
Sorry, yes, I was just going to come back on the points raised there. Yes, there have been rockets rained on Israel, but Israel has an excellent defensive system, which has meant that I believe not a single civilian has been killed. As a result, no, I have no objection in supplying defensive weapons, if that's the word, to countries if they're purely defensive. Now, the issue for me with Israel is the response that they have provided to a few puny weapons that haven't got through the defensive system has been totally disproportionate. And that is why, to my mind, the guilt, if you like, in this has very much fallen on the shoulders of the Israelis rather than the Palestinians. And that is why we need to be very, very careful about who we supply arms to.
Councillor Pottinger.
Yeah, I'm just I'm going to say that the amendment stands as it is. I don't want to go and tear wee holes in the rest of the wording of the amendment, of the original motion, but it does deflect it into a different type of issue. Yes, there's been a disappropriate reply from Israel. It's not the first time there's been a disappropriate reply from Israel. It's not the first time they've passed United Nations resolutions condemning this disappropriate action. Palestinian civil society wants the boycott, disinvestment and sanctions. And yes, it has been a manslaughter and it has been a major bombardment because they are the 5th largest militarised country in the world. Israel has the resources to do this, and they have been using these resources indiscriminately in some cases, where we've seen even on television pages now news of hospitals, United Nations run safe areas which they thought was in a school, etc., actually getting hit with some of these bombs as well. We've seen a lot of this from people who are sieged. The demonstrations throughout the world on Saturday were for peace in the area. Gaza, Palestine needs to be freed. I think everybody would support the freedom of an oppressed people in this chambers. But the end the boycott Gaza, I mean, they're not even allowed onto the beach at the Gaza Strip. Even that's out of bounds for them, in this siege. And we've seen attempts to run the blockade in the past with Turkish ship humanitarian aid and everything else that couldn't get through. They're stopping humanitarian aid getting in. And now we've got a big humanitarian issue that people need to get treatment and hospital treatment urgently. The Palestinian Society is calling for this sanctions and disinvestment and boycott of Israeli goods. And I think we can take on that boycott here in Midlothian and play a part in bringing Israel to the peace table and to a meaningful solution. And I think it would be a two-member state would be the solution. But we have to bring Israel to the table because they're not responding to United Nations resolutions. We have to bring something that's going to make them come forward. And if we go ahead with this, UK must take full responsibility and all the other things that's in this, you're running two different motions at the same time, because it's not, this motion is about peace in Palestine. And the Hamas have fired rockets in, as you say, Gaza Strip, but that's been used very much as an excuse for this bombardment, and slaughter, and that's really what it has been, because, as you say, the rockets are not getting through the shield that Israel has. Let's just go forward with the motion as it is, and as I've amended it, because the other paragraphs deflect from the real issue, and the real issue is who's pressing the button on this bombardment. And this is what we'll have to attend to today, and bring them to boot on that by having the motion and the Israeli sanctions included in it. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson. Constable, sorry.
Thank you, Ross. Yes, Councillor Pottinger, as I said before, I entirely agree with him. Yes, the beach is out of bounds. The Israeli forces killed 4 children, 4 boys playing on the beach, but they had the grace to apologise for that. Well done. What he said is all entirely correct, and as I said, I want it in the motion, but I propose what I originally said, that it goes in between the second last and the last paragraph, as I think the other points are very important as well.
Councillor Baxter.
I'd like to second that proposal.
Thank Thank you. Can I just clear from Councillor Pottinger, are you suggesting that Midlothian Council do boycotting? Because I believe this was raised in this chamber many years ago and it was deemed to be illegal. And that was my understanding, that councils can't boycott countries because of some paragraph in local government legislation.
No, not particularly as a Midlothian Council, but Midlothian Council endorses the support for a boycott.
Okay, right. We'll move to a vote here now then. Those in favour of the amendment as put forward by Councillor Pottinger and seconded by Councillor Muirhead, please show. Those in favour of the motion as amended by Councillor Constable and seconded by Councillor Baxter, please show. I don't think there's anybody left to only support the motion, so the motion as amended by Councillor Constable is passed. Thank you. Item 6B is a motion by Councillor Rosey.
Thanks, Robert. As the motion says, congratulations to Glasgow, the Scottish Government and Shona Robinson, the Sports Minister, for what has been described as the best Commonwealth Games ever. It's also congratulations to all the Scottish athletes. The 53 medals that they won were fantastic achievements. And if the medal table was actually reflected by the way of population, then I think of each nation, I think Scotland would be top. But they don't do it that way, unfortunately. An added plus to this, I think, is the fact that the medals were spread over a wide range of sports, I think, which augurs quite well for the future. I think it's that the legacy of the Games is vitally important, and it's good to see that the newly built venues were all being well used before and after the Games. So, as I say, I have great pleasure in moving this motion. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor DeMink.
Yes, I have great pleasure in seconding this motion, but I want to take issue with my learned friend who has promoted the motion, because there was one country that only had 100,000 people and they won a gold medal. And that particular nation actually, on average, did better than any other nation if you did it by capita. I was a bit confused when I listened to the media and they talked about the home countries. Maybe they were confused with the home counties, but I thought it was only one country that really put up this wonderful, most significant and amazing Commonwealth Games, and that was the Scottish nation. And I am enormously proud that they did so well, because it shows what a small nation can do on the world scene. And I much appreciate being able to second the motion.
Thank you. I will accept second place. Okay, is the motion accepted by the Council? Thank you. Item number 7, progress in delivering the future model principles, a report by the Chief Executive, Kenneth Laurie.
Thank you, Provost. This report presents a progress update about delivering the principles of future models of service delivery, and I apologise that a report which I think has a lot of very interesting examples of progress in it. It's such a, in a way, such a kind of dull title, but that is the model which the Council approved at its meeting on the 18th of December, and that included the principles set out at paragraph 2.1, best value outcomes delivered through partnership working, communities being partners in service design and delivery, and services being targeted and focused. And the progress report is summarised at Appendix A and presents progress against each of these three principles. And I guess in summary, 18 months on from the original recommendations, whilst there's still clearly much to be done, the principles and approaches are increasingly enabling the Council and its partners to improve service delivery and in some cases do that at lower cost as well. I think there's some very good examples across the Council in adult services and children's services elsewhere of prevention and early intervention, of co-production and of capacity building. There is a lot of additional information which is available to members in terms of particular case studies of work that's been done. That's in the members' library. But today the Council simply recommended to note the report and the progress made, and any comments that you may have are also invited.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, as Councillor, this is a progress report on essential procedures and outlines that we've already adopted as a Council, so I'm not going to really say much more to that than to move the recommendations.
Thank you. Report so noted. Thank you. We move to item number 8, the school session dates for the academic year 2015-16. A report by Ian Judge.
I'll stand in for the Director on this one today. It's a requirement that the Council's Education Authority set school session dates. As you can see from the report, we've endeavoured to synchronise with neighbouring council areas, including an amendment to align with a fairly late change at the City of Edinburgh dates, but we have revised dates now to take account of that. So the dates are now set out in the appendix to the report. Recommendation is to agree these revised school session dates for 2015-16 academic year.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. As an ex-teacher, I always welcome lists of school holidays. Whether the parents did so is very similar, isn't it? It's up for debate. One factor to note is how the October break. We have to align with Edinburgh as much as possible. I don't know how much they consult us before they make the decisions and how much we get pushed about by them, but it does seem rather early, the October break. It's a long haul in for the children and especially the staff up until Christmas, but we have no, as we say, we have no alternative. We have so many staff, of our staff live in Edinburgh, and so many of our people have work in there. So I move the recommendation.
Councillor Muirhead.
Can I maybe just, I recall seeing a report very similar to this last year, and every effort had been made to synchronise the dates. However, we were a week out, we were starting our summer holidays this year, the trade, which not only has an impact in terms of, you know, our staff that live in Edinburgh and work out here, but also, you know, we're in some instances sending children with special needs to facilities in Edinburgh, and it throws that out as well, so it has an effect on our customers, if you like, as well. How much effort has been put in here, and how, you know, are we saying that we are aligned with Edinburgh, East Lothian on all these, or are we going to have the same sort of issues potentially again?
Probably best, Sandra Banks from the Education Department is here, so it may be best for Sandra to answer that question. So, happy.
The main area where we're not aligned is on the start date of the term. Edinburgh some years ago brought their start date back. So, for example, now the children in Edinburgh are already starting back to school, and in 15-16, Edinburgh's start date is the 13th of August for staff and the 17th of August for pupils. But we're as aligned as we can be, because in 15-16 our pupils are resuming on the Wednesday the 19th. So we have a few days where we're out at August. But for all the other holiday periods, we are almost exactly the same. So we're the same for October, we're the same for Christmas, we're the same for the February break, and we're the same for Easter. And we will finish our session in 15-16 one day later than Edinburgh will finish.
Councillor Embry.
Sorry, just to ask it then as a supplementary, given that they haven't been fixed, and given the papers in front of us today, why can't we change it? Why can't we change it by the couple of days so that we do align ourselves? Is there not an opportunity to do that? Who does it upset? That's one. Sorry, I can't work out. No, I mean, apart from Councillor Constable says it upsets everybody, but I mean, you know, but the point of the matter is, you said just now in answer to Councillor Muirhead's question, we're still not aligned, but all I'm asking is, well, we've got the opportunity to align that. Could we not instruct that you go back to Edinburgh and say that we'll take the same dates? That's all I'm asking. Why can't we do that?
The constraint that we work with is the fact that the teachers' holiday year is not the same as the school year. So depending when we end, and we're limited by the number of days, working days in August that we can have teachers working, because their holiday year runs up so the school term runs up to the middle of August. The holiday year ends in July for teachers. Now, that is why we have a constraint. We do this calculation each year to ensure we do not have our teachers teaching any more than 10 days in August. Because if we do more than 10 teaching days in August, then they end up having too many days in their year. And that's what I meant when I referred to Edinburgh having changed something some years ago. So Edinburgh switched their dates some years ago, and since then we have been a little bit out of alignment. If we wished to change it, we would need to undertake a fairly significant union negotiation to change it. That is the constraint that we have.
Because, I mean, the terms and conditions for teachers are the same nationwide. So from the number of days you're actually in the class vis-à-vis the number of in-house days you have, etc., etc., is the same throughout the whole length and breadth of Scotland. I mean, what I don't understand is how we can't align ourselves. We used to be aligned. As you say, and we actually, the reason why we got aligned is in 1996, when the Unitary Authority came into being, everybody started to do their own things. When under the Midlothian region, you actually had a set timetable throughout the region, and everybody got on with that. And we got it aligned eventually because of problems that Councillor Muirhead has just alluded to, which was if you work one place and you live in another authority, it can be difficult to manage if you have children. What I can't understand is why we don't have the ability to change it. How are the teachers in Midlothian, the teaching staff, any different from the teachers in Edinburgh? I suppose really that's what I'm asking. And I know you tried to say, well, it's major negotiations would have to take place. If it's the same number of days that you're actually teaching, in other words, the number of days that you're actually in the class as opposed to pupil contact, should I say, as opposed to anything else, then it seems to me that it's reasonable to request that it be changed to align itself with Edinburgh. That's all. But if it can't be done, you know, it can't be done, but I just don't accept your answer.
Mr. Bourne.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, I totally agree with all the efforts that Sandra and others are making to align ourselves with Edinburgh, because the practical problems of people who work and have children in both authorities are monstrous. I mean, they're huge. And the same applies to some extent to East Lothian. However, I think in doing this, we mustn't get into what I regard as an utterly ridiculous situation that we see this summer. At the first week of the Edinburgh Festival, the Edinburgh children are going back to school. I'm sorry, I think that's ludicrous. I mean, Edinburgh Festival is a massive cultural event, and we're sending our teachers, many of whom perform in things like the festival chorus, back to school. That creates all sorts of practical problems. So I hope we never go down that line. I take Russell's point. The trouble is trying to get aligned at one point in time with the very, I'll use it, the strict days conditions that teachers have, and it can be quite constraining. It's quite difficult. And we in Midlothian do have one or two important differences, which I would agree with. First of all, the 2 days in September. I think that's a wonderful idea that Midlothian does. That has consequences for some of the holidays later in the year, I know. But I think that is a good idea. But Edinburgh, of course, don't do that. There's also sometimes a difference arises around the February time, which again is a holiday that I strongly support, because when you were in schools, the absence rates, when you didn't have a decent break in February, rocketed, and when you did have a decent break in February, they fell right back, so it made sense. The 1 week, I would agree, and I agree with what's being proposed today, is to align the October week, because many parents and youngsters have that week. They can often get a nice week away abroad, and it's a very popular week with both teachers, pupils and parents. I think this is a very difficult and complicated area, and I feel we do our best, but I sometimes feel we're kind of at the back of this. The real person that's driving it is Edinburgh, and I think that's unfortunate sometimes. Thank you.
Councillor Muirhead, did you want to come back in?
It's just that we seem to be saying that we've got a few areas where we're still out of alignment, and it's to do with the agreements that we've got, I assume, at a local basis with the trade unions. What attempts have been made to try to resolve that? Because I always find it quite uncomfortable when we talk about the constraints that we've got, and it's to do with our own internal practices rather than trying to meet the needs of the people that we're working for. So I would want to be assured that we had done as much as we could to negotiate with our staff to try to alleviate that position and do what's best for the folk that we're working to serve.
Councillor Constable.
Some comments on this. We can't obviously align completely. It would involve some of our teachers losing holidays. Edinburgh, I think Vic hit the point. Edinburgh get the children off the street for the festival and have been bringing them back too early, in my opinion. His support for the February break's well established. I think it's very handy if the family are rich enough to go off for skiing in Switzerland for the week or something like that, but that doesn't apply to a lot of our families who just end up with a week off in rotten weather when it'd be better getting a week off in better weather in the summertime. However, that's just my personal point of view. It may suit some, and I'm not proposing any change in that. I think we have aligned as much as we can, but I think the main fault is Edinburgh starting back too soon in August.
But then I'm going to have to just note the report.
Sorry, Provost, I asked a question and I'm not getting, I'm not being allowed to get an answer here. Can I get some kind of comment on that, please?
We do a lot of work to try and align the dates and to get agreement with the unions on the position. In relation, I don't know whether Edinburgh is going to hold to this, but in the dates that they initially consulted on this year for 15-16 and the subsequent 2 years, they were looking at moving back their start date in August to one that is the one that we have held to, i.e. around about the 3rd week of August. And I hope that that's what they do, because actually I think that date is the right start date. But it does technically coincide with the teachers' holiday year. And that's the point that our union rep has always held us to in terms of the accuracy. It's not that they're wrong, they are right. I do not know how other councils have negotiated a different position. But we're supported in this by other authorities around us. It's Edinburgh that is out of line on this one. And we don't have a great negotiating position with them in terms of getting them to do things the way we would like them to do.
Right, Provost, I mean, I just didn't want it to be like an I-beam kind of thing. You know, it's always been like that, therefore, if we're attempting to try and resolve it, then fair, that's always looking for an assurance on. If it's an insurmountable issue at this time, I don't necessarily give up in the longer term, but that's fair enough. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. We move to item number 9, proposed eligibility criteria for children's services. Report by John Crenett. Did I say that right?
Eligibility criteria, yes. Thanks,
Okay.
Clovis. We have in front of us the eligibility criteria for children's services, and what I'm asking Council today is to note the content of the report and associated papers, to approve the eligibility criteria produced for Midlothian Council's children's services, and to note the correlation of this work with Midlothian Council's wider self-directed support. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes, we do need to make changes and acknowledge that we have to work differently with children and their families, and to give them the say and the support they need, and to ensure that the resources are targeted. The new criteria I see is based on outcomes rather than assessments, and supports the practitioners. And I note that it was originally piloted and it's worked well with the family support teams, and that there's the 4 levels, and it shouldn't make any difference to whether or not you're an old person who stays in your home independently, comparing them to families with a child with complex needs. And we have to do it due to the new self-directed support legislation to help empower our people live fulfilling lives. And the new criteria embraces this principle and is in line with getting it right for every child in Midlothian. Therefore, I propose we accept the recommendations.
Councillor Muirhead.
Provost, I suppose I'm looking for some comfort here that this isn't just about saving money. You know, we're introducing eligibility criteria to determine the level of service that young people are receiving, and it's right to target support to where it's most needed, but I'm looking for some kind of comfort that it isn't just about saving money, that it's actually genuinely improving the delivery of service to the right people. If it's maybe just a wee bit more information on that, please. Thanks.
Trouble with this mic. Yeah, I mean, this isn't just about money saving. We've piloted this within the disability team and it's worked remarkably well. It's a new way of working. It's about having a conversation with a family rather than us going in, doing an assessment and saying, right, we'll put this into your home, which may not be the actual best outcome for family. It's outcome focused. We're now piloting it across our family support teams. And we have a young lad who's a family of 6 and a family support worker, rather than us going in every single week assessing, saying, right, we'll take you out, we'll take you into Edinburgh to see the festival things and that. We've actually managed for, what Mum said was that she wanted to spend individual time with this person, and we've allocated a sum of money so that it's not the worker that's going in there doing the work, but the mum is getting quality time with this young person. And to date, the outcomes for this young boy has been remarkable. Rather than putting him again through a parenting group, which is the old style of working, us deciding what is best for parents, she decided she wanted one-to-one time, and we facilitated that. That has come at a cost as well, but in the long term, it will be a cost that we don't need a worker in there all the time doing the work, that families are empowered to do that work themselves and take things forward. So I can assure you, it's not just about resources. It is a new style of working, and it's across adult services as well. We've linked very closely with adult services and with the disability team to make sure that this works and gets the best outcomes for children and young people.
And I assume that in the pilot studies that we've done, we've seen kind of that, I suppose, a consistent improvement in circumstances and the services that we're given. Because we can always get examples of a stunning change, or this has made a huge difference, but we're seeing a consistent improvement right across the board there.
We're at the early stages, and especially within children's services that isn't disability, because what we do have difficulty at is dealing with crisis at the moment. However, that's slowly going to be rolled out to the duty team, and what we're seeing is better outcomes for families. We all know that when families make decisions themselves, when they bring in a granny to help support take the child to school in the morning rather than a social work assistant and getting the stigma that brings with it, it tends to produce better outcomes, and that's what we want to empower communities to do and families. So yes, it's ongoing. We're still on a learning curve, and we're by no means there yet, but all indicators are showing that we're going in the right direction, and families are wanting to take this forward.
Okay, accept the report. Thank you. Item number 10, Pennycook Non-Denominational Primary Schools Catchment Areas, a report by Ian Johnson. Thank you.
Well, just on behalf of the Director, this report seeks approval from Council to implement proposed changes to the catchment areas of the primary non-denominational schools in the Pennycook area. Following agreement by Council in June last year, consultation was undertaken on proposals to revise the catchment boundaries for the 5 non-denominational primary schools in Pennycook. That work concluded in April of this year, with the consultation report being published in June, a copy which is appended to this report before you. Education Scotland has provided an independent review of that work and that report, and their report is also appended to this report to Council. Education Scotland concluded that the consultation work is sound, that proposals will achieve a more balanced approach to school roles in Pennycook, but also highlighted a number of issues which the Council needs to address in taking these proposals forward for implementation. Now, those issues are covered in Part 2 of the report and have influenced and informed the final set of recommendations, which is the numbered sections in paragraph 2.14 of the main report. It's therefore recommended that Council approves the implementation of those proposed changes. Also pleased to say Sandra Banks is still with us, so if there are detailed issues and questions, I'm sure either myself or Sandra can try and assist members as best we can.
Councillor Constable.
Thanks, Provost. Yes, this consultation was carried out on the boundary changes, a very full consultation carried out. I attended one of the public meetings and I was very impressed with our officials. I want to pay tribute to the way Sandra, Peter, Mary and Suzanne all handled the meeting, which went very well, and most of the people were very pleased with the results of it. The only significant issue has been really about Strathesc being reassigned to Pennycook High. Half the pupils already go there, and I'm pleased to see there's going to be a 3-year lead-in time to ease that change. As Ian said, paragraph 2.8, the Education Scotland states the realignment process are sound and have won the support of most stakeholders. You're never going to please all the people all the time, but this is a more efficient use of our resources, and I think I would recommend commend the recommendation to the Council.
Okay. Councillor.
Yeah, it's just a note on, is it on page 3 of the report, on 2.12, there's significant opposition to the proposals on the basis of potential negative impact on the pupil role of Beeslack, and also, the proposals to move the Strathesc pupils who may live geographically closer to Beeslack across to Pennycook, and where they've got to negotiate a really busy road. Do you have any comment on that, please?
The concern is well founded. There is no doubt that the children who live in the area that was previously Ladywood are geographically much closer to Beeslack than to Pennycook. But in relation to the road safety issues, we've undertaken work with our colleagues in transportation, and we will make any necessary amendments to ensure that there is a safe route to school. The distance, certainly, for those children to walk to Pennycook High School is considerably less than for many of our other children in other areas across Midlothian. I mean, the distance between the two high schools is just over a mile, so the distance isn't an issue.
Yeah, but there seems to be a feeling amongst some of the local population that this is a move to eventually close Beeslack School by reducing the school roll there. When you're moving young people who are just a stone's throw from the school and asking them to walk along 3/4 of a mile along a busy road to another school, it doesn't seem to make sense, you know.
In the fullness of time, with the housing development that is planned for Pennycook, all of that housing development is going to feed into Beeslack. So in the fullness of time, we're going to have to shift some of the pupil roll from Beeslack away to Pennycook High. There is an issue about timing, though, because it could be that if we move some of the pupils to Pennycook now, there might be a further dip at Beeslack's roll until the pupils from the new housing come through. But that is why we've suggested to postpone the implementation of the effective date of this change for 3 years in order to conclude the discussions about a single school for Pennycook or not. And that delay of that implementation should ensure that we don't do this dip effect on Beeslack in the interim.
Councillor Muirhead.
Thanks, Provost. I've read this report carefully. We've gone out to consultation here, and we've had feedback about issues that people have got with what was being proposed here, and it's good to see that we have responded to that and made amendments, basically in terms of this lead-in that you're referring to. It's interesting to note that the issues aren't really about the primary school catchment areas. The issues are about what effect these have on the secondary schools going forward. And it's this is a relatively easy one to deal with in comparison to what we're going to have to deal with next. But we've been through the process of making the changes to try to alleviate some of the concerns that were raised. Have we done any kind of, I suppose, follow-up testing, back to the participants in the original consultation to see if it alleviates their concerns? Is there anything that we've done to follow that up?
We've gone back individually to anybody who raised any concerns about, for example, the issues about perhaps children ending up in siblings from the same family ending up in separate catchment areas, concerns about nursery intake and going into primary. So yes, we have. We followed up individually, verbally, with everybody who has raised concerns that we had contact details for. And in the main, I think we have managed to allay people's concerns.
Councillor Constable.
Yes, I think Councillor Muirhead is quite right. We have made a lot of effort. Our departments are very good at going for individual concerns, especially with sibling requests for. We have a very good record in that way. The whole report is just, it really makes more efficient uses of our resources in Pennycook, and we have no intention of damaging. We have 2 excellent high schools, 2 of our best performing high schools, and Midlothian are in Pennycook, and we would have no concern, we have no intention of ever damaging them in any way.
Councillor Emery.
Yeah, just first of all, congratulations to Sandra for actually getting to the stage where she's able to bring a report to Council. I mean, it's been a long time coming, and it's never very easy. The one thing I suppose, as a local member, I think all of us, all the 6 members out there in particular, and probably 9 actually, because there's 9 actually cover the area, or parts thereof, as the saying goes, is the whole thing about siblings, Sandra. And I think that no matter how we try to massage that into 2018, it's not necessarily 2018, it's thereafter that you may have the problems, and we're going to have to address that along the way. The one question, one comment I will make is that for the first time we're actually doing forward planning in the sense of, as Councillor Moorhead rightly says, it's not what's here just now, it's about planning for the future for our 2 secondary schools. And I think it's important we actually get everything in place to actually meet that new demand. The Strathesque situation was a situation that everybody ran away from, including me, may I hasten to add, at the time when we were bringing the 2 schools together, because there was a lot of controversy at that time that those that from Ladywood had gone to Beeslack and those from Eastfield had always gone to Pennycook High, and when the 2 were coming together, there was quite a split. Certainly at the PTA, certainly at the Parents' Council, certainly with the teachers as well, about whether they look that way or that way when they were going to secondary school, and we kind of left it open-ended. But of course, as development is going to come on, it has that question, comes up, it arises again, where you've really got to make a decision. Now, I wish us all well on that decision, because I just think that that's probably the area where we are going to have perhaps the most grief. But at least we're making the decision, and you've, in answer to what Councillor Moorhead said, you're actually going back to those that have raised these points and explaining to them, like the Safer Routes to School situation, explaining that there are going to be that's going to be put in place so we can get pupils from their houses to the schools as safely as possible. The one thing I have got a question about, Will Provost, is that I raised quite a few years ago about this council looking at catchment areas for nursery education, and I was pooh-poohed by the then director that because it's not part of the Scotland Act, it ain't going to happen. But what it says in the paragraph here is due cognizance will be taken of people that have actually placed the children at their nurseries. Now, in a sense, that's fine if they're within the school catchment area, but what it does put up in and that's why I worried about it all these years ago, is it actually ends up that parents will systematically take their children to that nursery school because they're looking to put them in, because it's a brand new school, a primary school, they want to get them in there, so if they put them in the nursery, they'll automatically go there. Now, I know everybody in this room says, no, that's not what it's about, because there isn't a catchment area, but that gives us problems at education appeals, it gives us problems about placements, etc. And I suppose I'm kind of piggybacking on the back of this again. Notwithstanding that it doesn't need to be mandatory, should we not look as a council now that there's extended nursery times, we're going up, we're extending the nursery times for nursery provision, and we are tending to look at our school provision adjoining nurseries to schools, as certainly in the new build we've been doing that, and certainly we've been trying to do that all along. Is it not now the time? And I know the director's not here, Sandra, so it's a bit unfair, but from the council's point of view, the education cabinet members here, is it not about time then we looked seriously about aligning our nursery school provision to the school, the primary school? So it was that people knew in advance that that was the nursery that you took your children to at age 3, and that was the primary school that we'd be going into thereafter. And I just think if we don't do it now, in a few years' time, we are going to have to do it. And it's just something that I feel quite passionate about, because I do think if you're looking at education, we should be taking them in at 3 years' age and keeping them if we possibly can. We've not built the school yet, but we will eventually, maybe in Shawfair, Mr Johnson, that we'll build a school where it has from age nothing up to 18 in the same campus, and we actually get our education correct from these small beings that come, humans that come into the world, going from that education system right through to the leave school. And I just think something that's going to happen in the future, it might be Shawfair, I hope it can be, but let's look at the rest of our school area and look at nursery provision being at the primary school as well. And it might help to alleviate some of the problems later on. That's all I'm thinking about. Thanks.
Was that a question, eh?
Robert, thanks for that. I think I see Councillor Constant's got his hand up, so maybe I'll get an answer from him.
Councillor Constable, do you have an answer for that, man?
Thank you, Provost. Oh, well, it was wonderful to get this vision of the future from Councillor Rimley. Yes, well, there could well be a case. At present, we don't have this with nurseries. Many people pick the nursery for different reasons. There's different, the position, geography will depend on often where they're working, where the children will be put. Very often it's the position of grandparents. They'll take pick a nursery which is near grandparents, where the grandparents can go and put the child in and out, because these are all well within working times. So there's a lot of factors to consider in this. I'm not ruling it out. It could be that, yes, we could go to nurseries, but we don't have that at present because it isn't practical, in that so many people are picking the nurseries for geographical work reasons, positions of the grannies, and etc., for other reasons other than exactly where they live. They sometimes don't want the nursery there because they want one. Perhaps Bonnyrigg is popular, then they can catch buses into Edinburgh, or they've got a granny nearby, this sort of thing. There's other factors to consider as well. But these visions of the future were very much welcomed.
Councillor Rosie, then Mr Bourne.
Well, when I put my hand up, I thought Russell was about to finish mistakenly, but I'm not going to try. What was I going to say? What was I going to say? But yeah, it's not just football. I think we agree on Russell. I think there's some other things. But no, I think some of the things that you said there on the nursery thing certainly is worthy to think about, because I think that this long-awaited catchment thing, we know living in Pennycook, this has been going on for how many years since my kids were at school, and way before then, I think. And certainly, as we know, in education, certainly in the appeals, we have had problems because of people thinking, because they go to a certain nursery, that entitled them to then go to the school, and we've had to deal with that at the appeal hearings and that. And I think this, certainly the catchment would maybe help, because there's no doubt, although the new cooking school is great, it's been welcomed, it's brought its other wee problems, and probably problems to Corn Bank, because a lot of them want to go to cooking now, whereas before it was the old cooking, they maybe weren't so keen to go there. So I think this catchment thing, yeah, there might be areas it's got to be tweaked here and there, somewhere along the way, and that, but I think in general it's to be welcomed. And just to touch on the point Russell made there about the Strathesque issue, I know I was at a PTA meeting there, a teacher one group a year ago, and they said that they thought the fact they were travelling to secondary schools was a problem for them. And that's why I was a bit surprised when I saw the feelings in this report, because at that time I thought the feeling was they wanted to be aligned to one school. Maybe they weren't happy with what the school was, whatever, I don't know. But so I was surprised then. But it did cause them problems, and I think they wanted to be aligned. But no, that's fine.
Mr Bourne.
Thanks, Provost. Personally, I welcome this report. I think it's giving some certainty. I think the problem I hear from Pennycook is people just don't know what's happening in the future. I think Bob hit it on the nail when he said we have two excellent secondary schools in Pennycook. We just have to read the inspection reports from both of these schools. But they are two schools that have quite different cultures. And it does produce certain feelings, and I can understand why this is the case, but they are both very good schools. To me, there are two elephants in this room here which are going to keep arising. One is the physical condition of Beeslack High School, and I don't know how we tackle that. And two, the big elephant in the room is what happens in Lone Head, and I see this is clearly referred to in this report. I think that is an ongoing issue that I sense is going to be discussed further when perhaps we look at other areas within catchment matters. But please, I do welcome this, and I hope that the two secondary schools in particular will be happy, albeit maybe not 100%, that they've got some certainty forward projecting their pupil numbers, because projecting pupil numbers means projecting pupil curriculum, and also means projecting staff numbers. And you can't do that when there's uncertainty. So well done to Sandra and the people who've constructed this report. I know it's not been easy, but I certainly personally welcome it. Thank you.
Okay, do we accept the proposed changes to the catchment areas? Thank you. Item number 11, Strategic Development Plan for the South East Scotland CES Plan Update. A report by Ian Johnson.
Thanks, Provost. This report is seeking approval of the final stage of the Strategic Development Plan number 1 which covers the area of the 6 authorities, including Midlothian, and that make up the area of the Strategic Development Plan Authority, or CES Plan as it's called as shorthand. Just to quickly recap where we are, June last year, Scottish ministers approved the Strategic Development Plan with modifications, which essentially required the councils to collectively prepare supplementary guidance on the housing land requirement and, in a sense, to look for more housing. That supplementary guidance was prepared in the autumn of last year and published for consultation, public consultation in November and December. The guidance and the results of that consultation, following approval through committee and council, were sent to ministers, submitted to ministers in May of this year. And in June, the ministers agreed the submitted supplementary guidance, subject to a modification specifically relating to the way in which the 5-year housing land supply is calculated. At the end of June, 30th of June, the Strategic Development Plan Joint Committee, comprising the 6 authorities, accepted that modification and recommended to all 6 councils that they individually ratify that decision of the Joint Committee. In other words, saying they accepted the Minister's position, that they therefore endorsed the supplementary guidance. It means that the work on Strategic Development Plan number 1 is complete, and it is then, we can then move on to the second version, which work is already starting on. The modification required by the ministers and endorsed by the Joint Committee will have different impacts on different councils within the 6. For Midlothian, my assessment is that it will have minimal impact on planning for new housing in Midlothian, and it will have minimal impact on the local plan, which is at a fairly advanced stage, as you know. So accordingly, the recommendations here are to ratify that decision of the Joint Committee, which is to accept the Minister's modification and to adopt the supplementary guidance on housing land as part of the approved Strategic Development Plan.
Councillor Brent.
Thanks very much, Ian, for that. I'm a member of CES Plan, and sometimes I wonder if I'd been at the meeting and then the report says the same thing. But a couple of questions. How much work was it when the ministers changed their minds, and how did that affect our local development plan?
The background to the minister's decision was that there was a fair bit of comment, something like, I forget how many representations were made, but there was a number of representations made on the supplementary guidance that went out to consultation. That was a basis upon which then the 6 councils, through the Joint Committee, then submitted the supplementary guidance to the ministers, who were content with that. Very late in the day, and out with the period for submission of representations, Homes for Scotland made a further representation to the ministers on a specific point to do with the 5-year land supply. Quite a technical point, but one which was valid, and certainly that point that was made by Homes for Scotland is reflected in the modification that the ministers came out with. Now, that modification will have some greater impact on some authorities and lesser impact on ones such as Midlothian. But the bottom line is that I think the Joint Committee took a view that, all things considered, it was worthwhile accepting that position rather than challenging it, and then move on with the Strategic Development Plan number 1 put to bed and active and on the books, and for the work on Strategic Development Plan number 2 to move forward unfettered.
Thank you. If I could just have some clarity, Ian, please, on paragraph 2.9. I won't read the whole thing out, but it's the implications of the modification of the supplementary guidance are worth noting. And then it goes on to say, member authorities will therefore have to investigate the development of a consistent approach to this calculation, which is required for local development plan purposes also.
Yeah, the essence of that is to say that the Minister's decision has only taken it so far. What they've done is to say, right, well, in terms of your supplementary guidance, that's acceptable. You need to make this one change in relation to how you calculate the 5-year land supply. Now, over and above that, they've left it to individual authorities to determine how they will interpret that. But in essence, what will need to happen, there will need to be an agreement across the 6 authorities as to how they interpret the details of the Strategic Development Plan and the supplementary guidance, so that we're not out of kilter in terms of how we assess and measure the 5-year land supply, and also then be at risk of developers dividing and ruling amongst authorities, to put it bluntly.
Okay, I ask the Council to accept recommendations.
Okay, happy to accept the recommendations. Thank you. Item number 12, Carbon Management Plan Progress Report 2014, report by John Blair, Director of Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This progress report updates Council on the achievement of carbon reduction measures throughout the Council. Full details are set out in the appendix of today's papers, and I swiftly draw Council's attention to the table on page 87 of today's papers. It's pleasing to note, with the exception of street lighting, all main categories are showing year-on-year reductions. In connection with street lighting, members will be aware we've invested in LED fitments partway through the year, and that will be reported to a future meeting of the Performance and Review and Scrutiny Committee. And we've also adopted a number of housing developments, hence an explanation for the adverse trend in street lighting. Therefore, today, Provost and Council, you're asked to note the continued progress with the carbon management plan and the ongoing reduction in emissions. Thank you.
Councillor Roddy.
Yeah, good news that the 2014 plan is ahead of target, and I recommend that Council accept the report.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 13, National Mining Museum of Scotland, report by Kenneth Lawrie, the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Provost. This report provides an update on matters relating to the National Mining Museum of Scotland, particularly in relation to the funding of the museum. And many members will be familiar with the background to this. The Mining Museum opened in 1984, and over the years up to 2009, the Council provided very substantial amounts of financial support, and the details of that are set out in paragraphs 2.1 to 2.4. Turning to the current position, at present the Mining Museum receives annual funding from the Scottish Government, but not from the Council. During 13-14, an additional sum of £75,000 was given by the Government to cover the museum for that particular year. And in the current year, the Mining Museum made representations to the Government highlighting a projected significant deficit, and also contacted the Council to see if the Council would be prepared to provide some grant funding. There have been a number of discussions. I've been involved in some of these with the Director of the Museum and members of the Board over the past year in relation to their financial position, also in relation to their ongoing activities. In discussion with officers at the Scottish Government, they advised that the Scottish Government would, if possible, like to make a joint approach with the Council to providing additional funding to deal with the deficit which is anticipated both in this year and in next year. And provisionally, and this is, I assume, subject to ministerial approval, the Scottish Government is proposing to increase its annual grant by 40,000 to 410,000. And on that basis has suggested that the Council might also provide 40,000 funding to the Mining Museum in this year and the next year. And really the critical factor here is to ensure sustainability in the run-up to the opening of the new Borders Railway, the Waverley Line, which is seen as providing a stimulus which will then provide greater sustainability for the museum in the longer term. In the report, I propose that if the Council were minded to agree funding of this basis, it would be reasonable that there be a number of conditions attached to that, and these are set out at paragraph 3.4, namely a partnership agreement between the Mining Museum and the Council, voting representation on the board, clarity as to the intended use of Council funding, and transparent and open financial reporting arrangements with appropriate opportunity for scrutiny by the Council. And the primary aim of these conditions would, of course, be to ensure that the Council's contributions would have significant direct benefit in promoting key objectives for Midlothian and its communities. The National Mining Museum of Scotland preserves and presents an important aspect of the mining heritage of Midlothian and Scotland. It is a major tourist attraction and a well-used educational resource. Having regard to these factors and to the additional funding likely to be provided by the Scottish Government, the recommendations are set out for members' consideration at paragraph 6 on page 94.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Kenneth. I would like the Council to agree to this proposal and the four items, voting representation on the board, the partnership agreement and accounts being supplied on a regular basis. I wonder if our colleagues in the Labour Party would consider a request to the National Union of Miners for some cash. Do you think that would be any use doing that?
Yeah, Provost, we're quite happy if we can assist in any fundraising for any venture in Midlothian to write to anybody to assist, and we're quite happy to put our name to any letter to any of the unions or organisations that think that they might contribute towards the National Mining Museum.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, did you?
I was just going to be brief. Probably, I think it's clearly a short-term issue that the Mining Museum has, and we've been asked here for support for 2 years. At that point, the Borders Rail will be up and running. There's a clear advantage to the location of the Mining Museum as a result of that. And by doing this at this stage and being able to work more closely with the Mining Museum, I would hope that the Council and the Museum can develop and do much more over this period, so we can have a very positive relationship going forward once the Museum does get the benefit of having the rail passing so close by.
Okay, so to accept the recommendation that we provide £40,000 with the accepting the four recommendations in paragraph 3.4. Okay, thank you. Item number 14, Midfest 2014. Report by John Blair, Director of Resources.
Thanks again, Provost. This report updates Council on the arrangements being established for the Midfest 2014 festival, which is being held throughout Midlothian between the 6th and 14th of September. In section 2 of the report, we set out previous reports, details of the Saturday event, known as and branded as Grown in Scotland, details of the Family Sunday event being held in Dalkeith Country Park, and brief commentary on the other community events. Full details of the event programme have been widely circulated and are also available via the Council's website. Critically, turning to the resources section, in conjunction with Police Scotland, a safety advisory group has been established. The remit of this group is to ensure and maintain the necessary public safety standards, and depending on the precise event numbers, may cost up to £30,000. Detailed costings are provided on page 98 of today's papers. In terms of funding, the costs associated with primarily operating the Sunday event, the proposed funding arrangement being recommended by me is a one-off utilisation of Councillors' Ward Environmental Improvement Funds, and that is also detailed at the bottom of page 98 and the top of page 99 of today's papers. This approach, in my view, is preferred to seeking to utilise Council reserves in the wider financial challenges facing the Council. Therefore, Provost and Council, the Council is invited to consider the 5 recommendations as detailed in section 4 of my report. Thank you.
Councillor Rosie.
Yeah, it's good that we're building on the success of last year's Midfest, and it's important that we bring Midlothian to people's attention and show that we have what we have here, and that it is a place that's worth visiting. I know that I continually see tourists on the number 15 bus from Edinburgh. They go to Roslin, visit the chapel, then jump back on the 15 again back to Edinburgh. And I mean, that's happening quite a lot. We do not make enough of tourism, I think, in Midlothian. So anything we can do to put Midlothian on the map has to be supported. I think in Saturday's event, it's got a great line-up, well-known bands such as The View, Big Country, Pilot and Eric Falconer's Bay City Rollers, so chance to get the tartan trousers and scarves out again. No, I think that on the Sunday free event, it's an ideal opportunity to involve the communities in events, and all the other ones that are taking place throughout Midlothian across our communities. And so I would move that the Council supports the recommendations at 4 in this report and ask members to support the events in their communities. And we spoke earlier about Edinburgh driving school holidays, but I think they drive most of all the tourist activity in the south east of Scotland, and we seem to get the crumbs. I think we've got to get a bigger piece of the cake, and if I would say that we support this.
Councillor Milligan.
Yeah, Provost, we didn't really have much problems with the report, but we just want to seek clarity in recommendation C, that I take it this is an agreement with elected members, because a couple of elected members do have commitments that they've already entered into.
Yeah, you're quite welcome to put into it if you wish, like. Mr. Bourne.
Thank you, Provost. I would endorse everything that Derek has said. I think sometimes people see councils, rightly so, as places that deliver good education, which we do, as places that fill potholes, as places that grit roads. And these are key things, and it's what we spend the bulk of Midlothian money on, and rightly so. But a council, a local authority, has a key role to play in culture. I know in total figures it doesn't add up to a lot. And Midlothian has a wonderful track record. We've just seen the last debate about the Mining Museum, a very important local resource. We look at the support that we give both financially in terms of personnel to things like gala days, which again are very important for our local communities. We look at the November concerts every year where we bring all the schools and the communities together in the Ayrshire Hall. And we look at the great support that Midlothian gives to all the twinning activities that take place in Midlothian. This event is a wonderful cultural event. It brings together people of all ages, all communities, sponsorships, businesses. I do hope that the young people will have a key role to play in this and be involved in it. It's something I did mention last year. It is a success story, and I just hope that it's once more a success this year, because looking at kind of programme which brings everybody together, it just seems fantastic. I suppose I would just ask for one thing, that assuming this is highly successful again this year, can we try and secure its future for future years? Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Mr. Bourne, and for your continued support on all these issues and twinning associations and such like. Mr. Blair, did you want to come in?
Yes, in response to Councillor Morgan's point, I am aware some councillors have committed environmental funds to long-standing projects, so it's my intention to work with all councillors to meet the necessary funding along the lines as set out in the report, thus avoiding a call in council reserves. I'll give the council that undertaking, and I will report back after the event to a future meeting of the council.
Thank you. Do we accept the report then? Okay, thank you. We move to item number 15, the 87th Annual SDUC Women's Conference, invitation to appoint observers. A report by John Blair Director of Resources.
Thanks again, Provost. Briefly, the letter from the STUC invites the Council to appoint 2 observers to the 87th STUC conference being held in Perth in November 2014, and the Council is invited to consider this invitation. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I'd propose that the Council nominated Councillors Johnson and Russell to be 2 observers to the conference. I think I had a brief conversation with Councillor Milligan on that in advance of this, so I think that should hopefully be acceptable to the member.
Is that acceptable, the nominations? Thank you.